So it was that.
We should announce that.
Yeah.
And when we get there, I will announce it
Great.
as part of the discussion.
And I think you being on JRB, like, that'd be awesome.
I would love to get that.
Cool. But if you need any resources from like the, like what I sent you or anything like that from the judicial branch, I can direct you where to
You
go.
know, I tried to get the judicial branch to let me do a sabbatical on introducing mediation to various requirements of the judicial branch. Early 2000s.
In the last 10 years, they've grabbed it and run with it.
Yeah.
Even in small claims cases, like Judge Judy type stuff, they're introducing mediation.
Except that most mediation they're doing is head mediation.
Is it?
It's basically cost. It's basically, here's where the judge will come down. It's not real mediation.
Right.
And it has some really negative, I mean, I sat in on a couple of those, particularly around contract disputes. There's
Yeah.
a huge dispute about contracts. And the mediator didn't realize that what the issue was that both of these companies were headed by the daughters of their founders, both of whom was terrified to bring the company down.
Right. They weren't seeing what.
They were just seeing
Like the small,
price.
yeah.
And
Wow.
it would have been perfectly easy to get these two women to negotiate a resolution, but they were afraid of causing damage.
Wow.
So as far as I was concerned, he thought the mediation was a success. I thought it was a failure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I said, you know, this is not real mediation.
You know, May's on the Judiciary Committee.
Well, you know, I have drawers full of files on mediation and court mediation.
Yeah.
So there was a point in my life when I actually do it. But
This might be a way to have it be impactful here in town.
yes, that's what I'm thinking. I would love to do.
What's that?
It's our new HR.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, we
Nice
will
talk.
begin in 1 minute, guys. All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting of the town council for February 24th to order. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Osberger, Berthelot.
Here.
Bruder,
Here.
Bertoni,
Here.
Freudman,
Here.
Kotchenberger,
Here.
Moran,
Here.
Shuren,
Here.
Shaken.
Mr. Shaken will be a couple of minutes late. Coming out of Hartford as usual, so we'll see when he gets here. Next item on the agenda is approval. Sorry. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of February 10th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Ms. Berthelot. Is there a
Seconded.
second? Seconded by Mr. Bruder. Any comments, corrections? All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, here we go. I have a request. Before we move to the opportunity for the public, I have a request to add something to the agenda for Mr. Carrington. We need to resolve to allow the acting town manager to sign contracts and agreements in the name of the town. And, I mean, I would like to add this as new business FA. Would somebody make that motion?
What, AG?
Or G, 8G, that would do. Somebody like to move that?
Make the motion. I think I understand it. To add to the agenda at 8F,
8G.
FG,
8G. Under new business following F.
okay. New business. So 8G. A conversation about, or?
No, the resolution.
And it's, is it here?
I have it.
No, just two.
I think I'm the only one who has a copy of it.
No, it's
No?
in the, it's what he,
I think it's at every,
It's on every page. It's a simple one page.
Okay, I see it.
it's on an agenda item, somebody just.
All right, to add a, the Town of Mansfield certified resolution regarding the interim town manager's ability to sign contracts for the town.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Shuren. Comments, corrections? All those in favor of adding this to the agenda, say aye. Aye, raise your hand. Opposed? Was there an okay. Unanimous. It will go on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is opportunity for the public to address the council. Is there anybody here from the public who wishes to address the council? Mrs. Wassman? Mrs. Wassman, you know the rules. 5 minutes. Identify yourself, et cetera, et cetera.
Good evening. Betty Wassman, Old Turnpike Road. I'm here to address the Reynolds School issue on page 53. I provided a statement to each of you, so I'm not going to read it. I will let you read it. I think I wrote my phone number there, and I hope if any one of you reads through and thinks about this, then you question any of my comments or my calculations, I will appreciate it if you give me a call. I would like to know that. Tonight, I would like, when you get to that, for staff to provide information as to who does this negotiation. That really is a concern of mine. Now, I feel very strongly that you should not allow this contract to be signed at this point until you discuss it further. And I personally think, since this is a financial matter within the town, that it belongs in the purview of the Finance Committee. And I hope that it will be directed to the Finance Committee and that they will delve into this very, very carefully. As I say at the end, I don't think this town owes any money to Region 19. I think Region 19 has come off quite well so far, and I would be happy to go through calculations. I did at one point use, I estimated a square, well, no, I guess I didn't, maybe I didn't, but yeah, I guess I estimated for the first 8 years that a lease should be paying at least $8.50 a square foot. Now, I was renting business space at that time myself. As I know what the rentals were at that point. $8.50 was a very reasonable price to rent space in this town for any kind of a business venture, and it was extremely difficult to find space. Mostly $15, $16 was the going rate, and as I recall, at least one person who was located in what has become the downtown was charging $22 a square foot. So, it's something I'm quite familiar with. So please do think carefully about this. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about my opinions on it, but it's here. I have to make one little snide comment, I guess. That's about the school budget, which is presented to you as a 0.62% decrease in the budget. But somehow that doesn't take account of the fact that last year's budget was $600,000 over. They had $600,000 left. So if you take off the $600,000 from last year, which is where the budget should have been, you really have a 2% increase. Now, if this was Washington, D.C., and it was Trump, everybody was saying he lies, right? So, anyway, I think that there is really an increase in the school budget, and it's not really right to say that it is a decrease. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wassman. Is there anybody else who would like to address the council? All right, thank you very much. We'll close public comment. Next item on the agenda is report of the town manager. Mr. Carrington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Everyone should have a copy of my report, and there's some on the table for the audience. Just a reminder that first meeting for the town manager recruitment with Warren Rutherford is this Thursday, February 27th at 6 p.m. in Conference Room B for the council. Also, had a call from the Lieutenant Governor today, and they want to hold a ceremony to honor our Korean War and Vietnam War veterans in Mansfield. And I asked for the latest date possible because, with a new town manager and all that coming in, she wanted to do August, but tentatively we put down September 15th. I haven't looked at anything, so if counselors could look at their schedule and see if there's any conflicts, if you want to be at said event. And I would have to find a auditorium because we have 208 veterans, and about 50% usually show up, she says, to those type of ceremonies. So we need something that would host 100 people plus their families. But exciting things the interim gets to do sometimes. Department reports. Public Works, since we've hired the arborist crew leader, we've now removed 257 trees, which includes 58 trees that required contractor support. And snow, there's been no change since the last report in the use of salt and overtime. Town Manager's Office, most of you met tonight except for Councilor Shakin. Holly Schaefer has joined our organization today, our Human Resources Director. And with that, our Acting Assistant Town Manager, Bob McHugh, his last working day will be next Thursday, March 6th. He was a great short-term addition to the town. His mild-mannered professionalism was exactly what the town needed during this transition. He was instrumental in the town manager process review, reestablishing the safety committee, and the recruitment and hiring of numerous positions, including the Human Resources Director. So if you get the opportunity, please thank him and wish him well when you see him. And a reminder, with this report, the meeting dates and times will no longer be on this report we discussed last meeting. We also have some new employees. Yvette Gauthier joined the town as Information Technical Office Assistant on January 9th. She previously worked as accounts manager in a local dentist practice. Kelly Gifford joined the Nash Zimmer Transportation Center as an Information Desk Assistant on February 2nd, and she's a UConn student. And Lucy Ann Norton joined the Finance Department as Payroll Administrator on February 10th, and she attended University of Connecticut for a Bachelor's in Economics and Arizona State University to obtain a graduate degree in education, and she most recently worked with area business in various finance positions. And upcoming events you can see about the stores, farmers market, and the art show. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Carrington. Any questions for Mr. Carrington? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is reports and comments of council members. I will begin. First of all, I would like to thank the Chronicle for acknowledging the very fine service that we have received from our interim town manager, Mr. Carrington, and also somewhat earlier for a letter acknowledging the very fine work of our town clerk, Sarah Ann Chain. So if you haven't seen those two editorials, it's a really fine tribute to two public servants who have gone above and beyond. So thank you. The other thing is I wanted to say, as I attended the open house for Stonehill House, I'm not quite sure, it's for Stonehill, which is the old Grange building, which has been refurbished, restored, revamped, and is to serve as an event place. They're talking about having cooking classes and weddings and all kinds of things. The building is beautiful, really very well done. All of us have been watching the stone wall go up outside, which is a remarkable achievement, but inside is also very beautiful. And really they have rescued a significant building for the town. Those are my comments. Anybody else have reports or comments to make? Mr. Freudman.
I'll just add, would add that both you, Mayor, and I attended the Town University Relations Committee, and the Mayor did deliver the letter to for President Katsoulis. I don't know.
Katsoulis.
Katsoulis, thank you. And I do have to say that one of the people there that was representing UConn apparently worked in close to the president's office, said that the letter would be delivered to the president, and I believe I heard the comment added and that she expected that he would actually read it. So I was happy to hear that. And again, that was a great letter, contributed by the mayor and the town manager, and especially Director Linda Painter. It's a very, very fine letter delivered to the president of UConn.
Thank you. I will comment a little farther. We have had an additional meeting with members of the UConn administration to discuss some of the issues in front of us. We have had a commitment to continue negotiation and to not let this particular dispute around off-campus housing interfere with the collaborative relationship which the town has worked very hard to build over the past decade or more. So this is an ongoing project, and we'll report on what comes next as it happens. Any other council member wish to add to this to report? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to old business. There is no old business on the agenda, unless somebody has some old business they wish to add. No. So now we have new business. The first issue under new business is the Mansfield Middle School roof project. Mr. Carrington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to call Superintendent Kelly Lyman forward and Alan Corson, our Director of Facilities, to talk about the Mansfield Middle School, and Kathy Ward from the Mansfield Board of Ed. What they're coming forward to is to talk about the replacement of the Mansfield Middle School roof and forming a building committee to do that. So they're going to give an overview on why it needs to be done.
Welcome, and thank you for spending your evening with us. Do you want us to move, or these slides are not in our packets, right?
No, they're not in your packets, and there are only a few of them, but they may be of interest to you, so.
Okay.
Want me to get started?
If you want.
Yeah, do you mind?
No.
Okay, because I have the first slide. So great aerial view of Mansfield Middle School, and as John said, we are here this evening to talk about the middle school roof replacement, but I'd like to put it in a little bit of context for you. It's not that we just recognized recently that the roof needed to be repaired or replaced. In fact, we have a pretty careful process of assessing roofs annually and making repairs each summer. And we've known for some years now that the middle school roof was coming to the end of its life expectancy. In fact, just to give you an example, you may recall that I have shared with you in the past when we've been here talking about budget, that one of the things we do is a careful 3-year and beyond review of all of our facilities, looking at upcoming projects to support us with financial planning, and also, because many of these projects will be capital projects, to know and to give you some information about what's going to be coming up in capital. You'll see here that as recently as, so this would have been put together last December of 2018, you'll see that we identified that the roof replacement, this is, you'll notice, I'm sorry, in the top left, the first green line, you'll notice that this is the page for Mansfield Middle School. And if you follow the left-hand column down, it's pretty much alphabetical till you see roof replacement, upkeep, and repairs. You'll notice that as recently as December of 2018, we identified that by the 21-22 school year, it's likely that the roof would need to be replaced at the middle school. It's a rather long process, which I will get into in a moment, to actually go about getting state funding to replace the roof. But first I'd like to turn this over to Alan Corson, who's going to give you some pictures of the middle school roof and help you understand the state that it's currently in.
Good evening. Just to give you a little history on the roof, the area we're talking about, that white area there, is about 90,000 square feet altogether. And the roof was done or redone in 1989. And the green part there, the metal roof, that's 92. So this is a roof that had a 20-year warranty. You're in year like 31 right now of the roof. It was a J.P. Stevens single-ply membrane roof. This is what we're seeing quite a bit of the roof, is where it's actually the material starting to wear through, where you're seeing some of the inner layers of that membrane there. This same picture, or not same, but a different area, just to show you how. These roof gutters, I've actually have mentioned before, but they took the roof membrane and then formed it down into a gutter. And we see a lot of problems with how that material was bent there to go in to make that gutter. And that causes us a lot of leaks. And beyond that, the way the drains are set up there tends to back up a lot. So we're constantly cleaning those out. Leaks inside the school. Every time it rains, we seem to discover a new leak. So this is showing you some of those leaks in the school. We handle them as they happen. We call a contractor out, and then they make a repair.
So why are we coming to you today with a request for a roof? Roofs are considered renovations to schools, and as such, they are reimbursable by the state. However, the process for receiving reimbursement is as lengthy as it was, frankly, almost, for requesting funding for a new school. It requires us to go through a process of convening a building committee, of going out to bid, obviously, for an architect, of getting roof design developed, and then making application to the state. The application to the state has to include the fact that the town council has authorized the spending. It can be also the fact that the town council has authorized a referendum. So the application goes into the state actually before the referendum is held. And then as such, we are eligible in the next funding year for reimbursement. Our reimbursement changes annually, but when I checked with the state about a month ago, our reimbursement right now for a project like this is better than 70%. It's probably closer to about 73, 74. Some years it could be as high even as 76%. And interestingly enough, the state about a year ago passed legislation to also allow municipalities to include photovoltaics in roof projects, reimbursable at the same rate. So our preference would be to put out an RFQ to an architect to not just create a roof redesign, but also to create a full solar system on the roof, which would allow us then to reduce our operating costs. You may recall that when E.O. Smith did that recently, they recognized that with their reimbursement rate, which is a little bit higher than ours, that the photovoltaics paid for themselves almost right away, because they ended up paying very little for them, and the savings to the operation of the school was very significant. So it seems to make sense for us to do the same. Now, I've put a timeline up here. Given that the town charter requires 15% of registered voters to vote in the affirmative on a referendum, we know that it's very challenging on a non-state or federal election cycle to get 15% of the voters to come out, which is why we've targeted November 3rd, 2020 for the referendum, which, remember, still doesn't give us a new roof until the summer of 2021. So we're a year and a half away from even being able to start a new roof. And we think we can certainly continue to make repairs. But if we don't do the referendum in 2020 and we wait until 2022, the next time that we would hope for a 15% turnout, now you're talking 3.5 years minimum before we have a new roof. And given the amount of repairs that we've been making the last few summers, it is concerning to think that we might have to go 3.5 more years. We also have been blessed with pretty easy winters the last couple of years, and you all know the damage that can happen to a roof in the winter as well. So if you read this slide from the bottom up to understand our timeline, if we're looking for a referendum next November, it means the town council would have to authorize the referendum no later than September 3rd, which means if we need to get a roof designed, select an architect, get a roof design, and get our application ready for the state, we really need to get the building committee up and running so that we can get the architect selected sometime early spring. We're hoping mid to late April to give them a couple of months to get the roof designed and to do the PV design. And then we would seek to get our application into the state as soon as you were able to authorize a referendum.
Council members have any questions? Mr. Freudman.
Yes, no question the roof is old and needs to be replaced. My question is, can an architect design a roof in time that we have estimates and can go, call for a referendum between now and September?
Yes, there'd be time for that.
Mm. And are you, another question for the superintendent or whoever knows, are you absolutely sure that the reimbursement rate is always the same for adding photovoltaic, even though that's not as vital as a roof? Would there be never two reimbursement rates?
Yeah, not only is it the same, interestingly enough, I had a conversation with the Office of School Construction Grants and Review, as I mentioned, about a month ago. And you may also recall that when we were originally doing the conceptual design for the new school, we were trying to fit within a certain space standard, right? So many students only allows for a school of such a size. Well, the same happens to be true on the PV. They'll only allow a certain amount of the roof surface to be covered by PV based on the number of students that you have in your school. However, she then said to me, well, that's if you make the PV installation the same project as the roof. You also have the option to make that a separate project, in which case there's no space standard and you would still be reimbursed at the same rate. So what we would actually have to do is make two applications to the state, one for a roof replacement and one for a PV project. And I assume they have that allowance so that districts that don't need to add a new roof could still add a PV system on their roof. So we'll actually make two applications, both reimbursable in the low to mid 70% range.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, what this means for the council is we need to appoint a 5-member school building committee. The school building committee has to have the mayor and the head of the school board on it. And Kathy and I are learning a lot about construction this year. So the resolution in front of you says either the mayor or her designee. I think I will try to do it unless it turns out that there are just too many time conflicts and I can't, in which case I would find a designee from the council. We also need somebody who has building experience, construction experience, and then we need 2 other people, either from the public or from someplace. So we need a total of 5. Unlike the new school building, this is a relatively simple project. It's only, the roof does not need to be rebuilt. It is a single layer surface. It will need some reguttering, I gather, and some other kinds of improvements, but it is not a particularly complex project. So there is some real hope that we can get it done within this fairly tight schedule. So in the package in front of you, there is a recommendation for a motion on page 8. Would somebody like to move the motion? Mr. Shaken.
Thank you. I'd like to move effective today to establish for an indefinite term a 5-member Mansfield Middle School roof building committee to replace the Mansfield Middle School roof and to include the installation of photovoltaic solar panels. The committee will include the mayor or her designee, Board of Education chair or her designee, and 3 representative members of the community. The town manager and superintendent of schools will serve as ex officio members of the committee.
Is there a second? Mr. Kachenberger. Second. Mr. Kachenberger seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion, Mr. Shaken?
Yes, briefly. Thanks for your presentation. This roof needs to be replaced. I remember water spots on the ceiling panels when I was in middle school, which I graduated from in 2002, so almost 20 years ago. Maybe at the beginning of the roof's life or the end of the old ones, either way. I also think it's very important that when we do major projects like this as a municipality, as a Board of Ed, whatever, that we, when we are sort of cracking into something, that we return it more environmentally friendly than where we left it. And the fact that the state has decided to pay for these things somewhat recently, I think is excellent and something that we ought to take advantage of. Certainly that building is big enough to reap a significant amount of benefit. The other point that I'll make just about that on a much broader scale that I find very interesting and intriguing and exciting is that the requirement or the restriction that those solar panels only be used to generate electricity for that building and aren't able to help with other things in the town is something that exists only because of the sort of construct of current state statutes. It's something that other states don't do, and other states allow municipalities to sort of generate electricity for themselves in one place and send it over to this building or other places, which is a place Connecticut may get to and may get to sooner rather than later. And the fact that we are taking steps across now this building, should this pass, the region, the E.O. Smith High School, and of course with our new elementary school, sets us up in a really good shape to, when regulations are loosened such that we can take advantage of pooled or shared solar in Connecticut, we will have some infrastructure already set up for it, which is really exciting and great. So I hope everyone will support creating this committee and everyone will get to work so we can get this on the ballot in November. Thank you.
Any other comment? Mr. Freudman.
Yes, I am in support of this project, of course. We need a new roof, but I do have a motion I'd like to introduce as an amendment. On the third line of the motion, the part about include the installation of photovoltaic, I'd like to replace the word include with 2 words, consider including, so that the motion would read in part, starting from the end of line 2, the Mansfield Middle School roof, and to consider including the installation of photovoltaic.
Mr. Freudman has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'm going to second that motion.
Mr. Fatoni seconds it. Discussion. Mr. Freudman, you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, I'm all for photovoltaic. If it makes economic sense. A roof you have to have. There's no debating that. Photovoltaic should only be installed if this new committee that we are probably going to be voting on soon to form feels it makes economic sense. It might make economic sense, but it depends on the reimbursement rate. It also depends on electric rates. You know, utility companies go to the state regulator, and they always like to charge as much as they can for the power they're downloading to us customers, but they want to pay as little as possible for the electricity that they reluctantly have to accept as being uploaded from solar panels. So again, it depends on the economics. It might be the case that if interest rates are high, the committee might conclude that the amount of money that we would save by having solar panels might not exceed the additional debt service. So all my motion is doing is saying, consider it, look at the economics of it. If it makes sense, do it. If not, don't do the solar panels.
Mr. Shakin.
I have a question for our presenters, if that's in order.
Go ahead.
This is either, I guess, Kelly or Kathy. Did the school board consider these things and make are they making a recommendation as a body to install solar panels on the roof?
Speak to that.
Yes, we did make that recommendation. We feel that it's the right course to take at this time, just like we did with the elementary school project. Certainly looking at the finances will be an important aspect, but we were committed to solar panels.
Okay, thank you. So I think I understand the proponent of the motion's point. I think the role of the building committee ought to be similar to the role that the last building committee we had which was to figure out a way to implement the recommendation of our elected bodies. In this case, this is the recommendation of the school board. The building committee will then come to us with all of the finance information and numbers, and we as a body will decide by September if we want something on the ballot for November. Okay, given this, we want to ask the voters to approve or not approve it, or given this, we think it ought not to be even put forward to the voters. It doesn't make sense for this project. That should be a decision that we make. The school board shouldn't be tasked with making a recommendation one way or another. They should be tasked with figuring out how to implement the recommendation of the Board of Ed. And then, of course, ultimately, this is a question that will go to the voters. If the voters think, and if I understood Mrs. Lemon correctly, there will be two separate questions on the ballot because there will be two separate projects. So there will be a, do you want a roof? Yes, no. Do you want to put solar panels on it? Yes, no. Question put to voters, and if the voters ultimately decide, no, this is a bad idea, we don't think it makes economic sense, they can vote yes on the roof and no on the solar. So I appreciate the intent of the motion, but I ask my colleagues to vote no. Thank you.
Further comments? Mr. Freudman, for your second time?
Yeah, I understand what my honored and highly esteemed colleague, Councilor Shakin, is saying. On the one hand, he's saying the committee will decide if it makes sense or not. That's what I'm asking for here. See if it makes sense or not before presenting it as something to the public. They'll be the ones that have access to the information and consultation with the architect, and if they decide that it doesn't make economic sense to add photovoltaic, they shouldn't have to bring it to the voters to vote on the referendum. But the way this motion is written without my amendment, it basically mandates that they will include it. So all I'm saying is give them that choice to filter out the idea if they're the ones looking at the numbers in a much more fundamental way than voters will. All they'll see is a referendum question.
Any further comment? All right, all those in favor of Mr. Freudman's amendment, please raise your hand. All those opposed to Mr. Freudman's amendment, please raise your hand. Mr. Freudman's amendment fails. Further discussion on the motion? I will add, if this motion passes, we will need to have volunteers from the community for the building committee itself. I am going to recommend that if anybody in the public is interested, that they submit a letter or an email of interest to the town clerk, who will forward those letters to the Committee on Committees, which will make a recommendation to the council, hopefully at our next meeting. I on March 9th, so we're looking for a rapid response on this for any member of the public who is interested. And remember, we're looking for at least one person with some construction experience. So if this motion passes, then I hope we can proceed as quickly as possible to establishing this committee. All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And it is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now you got to find us some members. Thank you very much. All right, next item on our agenda is B, the 2020 Small Cities Community Development Block Grant. And what we have is a motion to hold a public hearing. So we are not debating the proposal itself. However, would somebody make the motion that appears on page 16? Mr. Bruder?
I move to, effective today, February 24th, to schedule a public hearing for 7 p.m. at the Town Council's regular meeting on March 23rd, 2020, to solicit public comment regarding the proposed application to the State Department of Housing for funds under the Small Cities Program.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Berthelot. Mr. Bruder made a correction. There is a typo in the motion on paper. It should read 2020. Okay, would you care to speak to your motion?
Just to say that I think that this is coming from the staff and that it would be good for us to put on the agenda.
Any further comments? Mr. Freudman?
I don't have a comment at this point. My question is there an opportunity to get some clarification on this from staff? I noticed that our Director of Planning is in the room. I wanted to understand what would be discussed and proposed at the public hearing.
Mr. Carrington, would you like to clarify or invite Ms. Painter to clarify?
I'll invite Ms. Painter up. So.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. In response to Councilor Freudman's question,
I haven't asked one yet, but
oh well,
but please go ahead.
The purpose of the public hearing is actually required by the Connecticut Department of Housing as part of the application process for the Community Development Block Grant Small Cities Program. So as part of that public hearing, we would be explaining what we've previously used money for, discussing and soliciting comment on community development needs, as well as a proposed application. So at this point, we do not have a specific application that we have put together. I will say that the application process seems to get shorter and shorter every year. They had a workshop the last week in January, and applications are due mid-April. So there is a project that staff is currently exploring with the White Oak Condominium Association regarding their septic system. So we're not sure whether or not that will proceed forward at this point. But given the advertising requirements for this public hearing, we wanted to make sure that we brought this before you and got the hearing scheduled in case we decide to move forward.
The reason I was asking that you would come up, and thank you for answering questions, is I've seen these come up before, and it's a good kind of a program, and it's good to get that money and have it used. But I've seen it used in two different kinds of ways. I've put in two general categories. There are probably some other tangents off of that, but I've seen it where it's used for helping people who are in great financial need make some critical repair to their home, their primary residence. I've seen it used where somebody needed a septic system real fast. And there's no way to pay for it. Those are the kinds of things I really support, as you know. I've also seen it used for such things as making improvements to the changing room or bathroom at the community center, or for upgrading the kitchen at Juniper Hill. I've seen these used for, quote, community uses that really aren't directly used to help people in dire financial need. So I I realize we're not here debating the merits of this. I'm just saying, I know you might very well, possibly, when this comes to public hearing, be adding comment, and I would like it, just wanted to make sure that these two categories are understood, and you know I favor the former, to help individual homeowners with repairs. So that's what I'm really for. Okay.
Mr. Shaken.
Thank you. I think this would be a great conversation to have once we have a public hearing and are debating the passing or not the item on the agenda. This is just to put a public hearing on our calendar and have the public come and tell us about this application.
Any further comment? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is the Senior and Disabled Transportation Program. Starts on page 27. Mr. Carrington.
So, Mayor, the next three items are going to be Human Services, so I'm going to call up Pat Schneider, Director of Human Services, and if she needs to call anybody, bring anybody with her, she can.
Dr. Katie Bell is also here, but she'll come up for the item on youth services. And we also have someone here from our Commission on Aging who had written a letter on senior transportation, so I'm not sure if you want specific information regarding their thought process.
If she would like to come to assist you in this, she's welcome to join you at the table. So you won't be alone.
That's right.
Ms. Schneider, can I ask too that you speak closer to, or speak up a little bit? I'm just having a hard time hearing your voice.
Yeah, I know in my voice sometimes. I brought my water this time to make sure it kind of goes in and out sometimes. So, okay. So I'm actually here to answer your any questions you might have about senior and disabled transportation. The town of Mansfield participates in a regional program through WRTD for our Dial-A-Ride senior and disabled transportation. That is complemented by our volunteer transportation program and some hours for out-of-district trips and transportation. Through the use of our van, we do have a part-time driver as well. So one of the things that we've seen over the last several years in particular is some real issues with the Dial-A-Ride program that consistently come to our attention. And with our current resources, we help where we can, but we cannot provide the level of transportation that's missing. One of the biggest areas where people are having problems right now is getting to and from medical appointments. With the way that the grant is written for the regional transit district, they cannot prioritize medical appointment, medical transportation, and this is a real issue. There have also been some problems with there are medical transportation and transportation to appointments through the state Husky program. There's services that people are eligible for, but there seems to be a real hard, it seems to be a real hard process, a real unreliable process for people, and they are kind of turning to the town and saying, is there anything we can do that the town can do to kind of increase that? I did talk to the person in our office, Jordan, who does our transportation, just to ask her how many calls she took over the last year that we could not help or provide the transportation, and it was 84 requests, which is a significant number. Some of those were people who the Dial-A-Ride program was not working for, and there's a number of reasons for that. Sometimes it's long waits, sometimes it's long drives while they're on the van, and sometimes it's that they just can't get the ride from WRTD, because once their buses are full, they're full. So they don't have another option for people. And that's kind of what's brought us to that. There also have been some changes in the way that they're doing routing at WRTD that's making it a little bit less senior friendly. They are not stopping in both directions, so people have to ride the whole route around. So for example, if you're going from Juniper Hill to the senior center and then you want to go back, instead of the bus going back, they have to ride all the way around the whole route just to get back up to Juniper Hill. They also will not wait unless someone is outside waiting for them, and which has been a real problem during this winter season, because it's really sometimes pretty hard for someone who is disabled or older to stand out in the cold and wait for the bus. And they won't stop or give any time. So that's again been a problem, particularly at our senior housing sites. So we know that transportation is one of the most challenging things, particularly in a rural area where there is limited public transportation. And sometimes you have to drive a while for service. And again, unfortunately, they can't prioritize medical transportation, which is the biggest challenge. So that's kind of what's brought us here.
Would you introduce your colleague?
Oh, I'm sorry. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Martina Wharton, and I'm from the Commission on Aging. I live at Juniper Hill Village in Mansfield.
Thank you.
Right, and she's acting chair at this time, so.
Well, welcome. Questions from council members? Mr. Bruder.
Hi, how are you? I had a question about, you said that we have a part-time van driver at this point?
We do, and this is paid for out of a grant that we get. It's called the the Municipal Senior and Disabled On-Demand Transportation Grant through the Department of Transportation at the state.
Oh.
And that's who pays for that. We have wonderful volunteers that also either drive a town car or their own car with some mileage reimbursement that's also paid from that grant. But those drivers were really supposed to be for out-of-district transportation, and that's not what's happened with that transportation program. We do some of that, but because of the fact that there are problems just getting right around here to doctor's appointments, we get calls for that as well.
What would be considered out-of-district?
There are, 7 towns? I can look that up. I have that information here. But so it's Willimantic, Coventry, Ashford, Wellington.
It's the WRTD district.
It's the WRTD district.
Those towns served by WRTD.
So technically that's really the way that they're supposed to be able to get to and from medical appointments. And unfortunately that, they can't prioritize by age, disability, so any adult can actually call and book Dial-A-Ride. It's
right.
It's different.
Recently in the Chronicle there was an article highlighting, I think, Columbia, who's working with other towns as to coordinate appointments so that if Columbia and Andover, for instance, have members of residents that all have to go to, say, Farmington for the Yukon Health, one of their town vans will take them for that, and then the other town van will stay in the area for both towns. Do we do anything like that?
So because we're regional and it's through the town transit district, they're technically already doing that, except for those other towns where it's a town program, they're able to control what's prioritized as well. So they're not regional and are trying to do some regionalization in those towns,
right. Whereas
we are part of a regional, which I'll tell you that we get a lot of bang for our buck in that, because a good portion of the transportation is offset by their transit district grant.
Right. And that's for WRTD.
Yes.
But what about for our van itself? Like,
Our-
do we
our
control
van-
that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
That's right, yes. But again, because it requires a public service license, really the only person who can drive it is a staff member. So that's why we, kind of reconfigured the initial grant so that we could do that, because we do have people who have wheelchairs. So,
Right.
for example, if someone calls and wants to use the volunteer program, but they're in a wheelchair, we don't have a volunteer that can drive that van.
Right.
So, and also part of that grant is for group trips too. And so, we've had to cancel group trips because someone who was in desperate need of a medical ride. And we've also had to not provide rides because there was a trip, because we have one driver, one van, and it's very part-time.
Right.
As a former volunteer driver, I was driving people to Manchester, Vernon, Glastonbury, and Farmington.
Right. And that was the purpose of and we still do
And
that.
only but those towns are all outside of the district. So
Yes.
there is no other transportation to
No.
those towns other
No.
than the volunteers.
No, unless you are on, as I said before, the
On the
Husky
Husky.
program. And again, that has become more and more of a challenge
Right.
for people to coordinate, even if they have if they're on the program.
Right. Ms. Bertholt?
Thank you. Forgive me because I'm probably showing just how little I know. But the Wyndham Regional Transit District, you said that they don't prioritize medical appointments.
No.
Where do the rules come from? Where does this program originate, and is it possible to change the rules?
So the majority of the funds come from the federal through the state grant, transportation grant for transit districts. And because of that, and because of the way, from what I understand, the rural grant is written, they cannot prioritize one type of transportation over another. Whereas the town-run ones, this is the first community I've worked in that it wasn't a town-run program. If it's a town-run program, you can say, we're going to prioritize medical appointments, or we're going to do, rides to, Glastonbury on this day and Farmington on that day. They cannot do that with the way that their grant.
Can we look at the
written.
implementing statute and make sure that it really says that?
So that wouldn't really be up to the town. That would be up to WRTD to do that. And
We can look at the statute, though, and if the statute doesn't say, if the statute's unclear, we could say, we want you to prioritize.
but we can't. Their board can.
Well, we could ask their board to prioritize.
We'll take a look at it.
Right. I do know in the past, when I've talked to the previous executive director, she had said that just wasn't possible, and I believe she came in front of the council and said the same thing. It wasn't possible.
We could look at the statute and make sure it's not possible.
Sure. And right now, I know we have one member, and do we have a vacancy? So on that board. So Mansfield has just one member and, should have two. So, and had two in the past.
We can look up, we're knowledgeable people. We can look up a statute without going through another organization and find out what the actual law says.
Right, except for their board would still be the people who would take
We
the
could
action.
go to their
not
board and
us.
say, the statute doesn't say.
Mhm.
Listen to
I think what Pat's saying, if we had two board members, it helps us for voting.
Right.
We have one instead
I'm
of
trying to say that in the nicest way
No, we're
possible.
aware of that, but still,
Mhm.
I mean, a key piece of addressing that problem is just make sure we know what the law says.
Correct. It was the first time I've ever heard that. But then again, it's a different type of transit district because it is rural and regional. So, and again, a lot of dial-a-ride programs are actually funded and run by the municipality or contracted by the municipality. So they have more control than we've had.
For clarification, though, if they're taking the same money from the federal government, then they're able to prioritize medical?
They're not getting money from the federal government. The municipalities are funding.
Entirely from their own
Yes.
tax dollars, okay.
Yep. So that's why I said it's a good deal for Mansfield, because it costs us less. Our cost share is significantly lower.
Mr. Shakin.
So we've got a request. I think the reason this is on our agenda to have you come and talk about is we've got a request from the Commission on Aging, sort of as part of your budget proposal to the manager, as part of the manager's proposal to us, then ultimately a request to us to fund a full-time driver position in your department. We're obviously not in budget season yet, and so I'm not going to ask you to speak to whatever the manager decides to put forward to us, but sort of in your opinion, is there a full-time driver's amount of driving to do within the town?
There is, in fact, that probably, I mean, the need is so great. Let me just put it to you that way. The need is very great. So I absolutely believe that would be, in fact, we would still be prioritizing, but it is more than just the driver, just so that you know. When you start getting into expanding driver hours, you have to look at your vehicles. Right now we only have one vehicle. It's actually older. You have to look at who's going to be doing the scheduling, dispatching, taking the calls, and all that gets up too. So it is more than that.
So I guess my question and an ask to you as we get into budget season as it relates to this is, first of all, I don't think anyone is going to make a proposal to pull out of the WRTD.
No.
And to pull out of the dial-a-ride program. So we will essentially be running a supplemental dial-a-ride system here in addition to the $125,000 we pay to WRTD to run a dial-a-ride program that is not working for our seniors trying to get to medical appointments. It certainly works for a lot of people who use it, who have disabilities, getting to work every day, all that kind of stuff. So
just to clarify, that isn't the amount we pay for dial-a-ride. That's also our portion of fixed route and the mandate for the ADA transportation, the ADA accommodation for fixed route transportation. So the amount for dial-a-ride is significantly less than that.
Okay. My question is, have you thought about, are there other ways that we could spend the amount of money that a full-time driver and the various capital expenses and otherwise would cost that would achieve a similar outcome or maybe even a better outcome? So you had mentioned other towns that have their own dial-a-ride program contracting for services. We certainly have a number of transportation providers that are local to this area, EastCon, Access, some others that do this work.
Right.
You mentioned
Coconut Valley also does a different type of contracting with individual towns that they then can prioritize. Yes.
You also mentioned the Medicaid program's non-emergency medical transportation program, which has issues, has always had issues, certainly, but there is a statewide contractor under that program that does hundreds of thousands, millions of rides every year for Medicaid recipients across Connecticut. I mean, there are providers out there, and so is it something that we might get more value out of by contracting with an organization that's doing this work? Not just value in terms of we spend less money on it, although maybe we would, but value in terms of there are a lot of the complaints and challenges that we always hear from seniors trying to get to medical appointments with dial-a-ride are complaints and challenges that the dial-a-ride, any dial-a-ride program is going to have, namely that it's not a cab. So you aren't going to you're going to have to sort of be on a route. You'll have to, either the driver will have to wait for you in the parking lot until your appointment is over and drive you right home, or you'll have to wait until a driver gets to you.
Correct.
There's certainly lots of operational efficiencies to make it work better than WRTD sounds like it's working right now, but if we had a contractor who had more available drivers and vehicles than one, which is what Mansfield would hire, we could have a service that maybe more meets the needs for the same cost of our seniors. And so I just want to make sure we're thinking about all of the available options. We could put a fund together to pay for Uber and Lyft. I mean, just thinking outside of the box for things that might work.
And again, you know, we've tried actually to help, over there we do a pretty good job of showing people how to use Uber and Lyft. There is a service that we've tried to follow up on called GoGo Grandparent, which is actually almost like a concierge service with that. People have not had good luck. I'm not sure that they're really fully in this area yet, you know, because that would be very helpful for people because you can use a regular phone to get it instead of having to, you know, to be very tech savvy and all of that. So there are some programs out there, as well as you were talking about looking at putting out RFP or RFQ if there are funds available to see who might bid on it. Because you're right, one of the reasons people really like the volunteer program is one person goes with you. Usually they park and wait for you to come back.
Right.
Whereas any type of rooted service, you know, or even a regular dial-a-ride program, you're correct. You're still going to be making choices. People are still going to ride longer than if you were in a private car. I mean, that's...
And the reason I make this suggestion, I know both of those, that is a very loosely formed idea.
Right.
I know Veo uses drivers that also drive for Uber and Lyft. That's part of the challenge that they've had. Veo is the non-emergency medical transportation contractor with the state for the Medicaid Husky program. That's part of the challenge that they've had is their drivers have 3 phones with the 3 different apps because they're trying to make the most money that they can driving for a living, right? And so people are dropping medical rides. But, you know, on average, it would cost you $50 on Uber to get to Farmington. So it's $100 round trip. And so you could, for the same amount of money it might cost to hire someone and buy a van, I mean, you could do thousands and thousands of trips to the health center in Farmington if we just sort of paid for that service. And I don't think we have 3,000 trips to the health center in Farmington a year worth of trips that we're contemplating sort of doing. So I think that's the thought that I'm sort of coming from is if we bid these services and contracted with a local provider, Uber and Lyft's probably a little out there, but someone like Access or any sort of local transportation provider who could supplement what we have, supplement Dial-A-Ride with something that would work better for seniors, that might be a way to get the best service for the best amount of money possible rather than just sort of adding to our staff capacity without adding vehicles and multiple staff and all that kind of stuff.
Mr. Shuren.
Just a quick question out of curiosity. Do you have an estimate of the number of people in Mansfield who would potentially rely on such services or who do rely on such services?
I don't know if you, you know, I can tell you how, you know, how many unduplicated people right now are utilizing our services. I did bring, you know, I ran those stats.
Presumably some are not doing so because it's not fully accessible to them.
Right.
Your microphone.
And we have started tracking the people that we can't, you know, who make requests and that we can't provide as well, so that, you know, because we know. So over the past year, we've over this past year, so far we've done 104 rides. Right now, I think our number of regular people who call to request are 17. That's just for out of district medical transportation, and then for our transportation program, totally is 122 unduplicated people. So.
For this year, when you say this year, do you mean this calendar year so far, or what?
Yes. So.
Is that all of 2019, or are you just the 2 months of 2020?
No, I'm sorry, the fiscal year.
Oh, fiscal year.
The fiscal year. But I can tell you we take a lot of calls where we're trying to help people negotiate with Dial-A-Ride and some of the other, different staff members, not only Jordan, but our social work staff also try to help people access those other programs that are not working so well, and try to find other options for them. We also look to see if they're eligible for companions and homemaker services, which sometimes provide transportation as well, and if that can fit in. So, and again, you know, in the best of situations, someone has a family member or a friend, and a lot of people do rely on that. But, and then there's some nice people in the community who provide rides just informally. But there are just a lot of people out there, a number of people that have no other options.
So just as a clarification, you said there were 104 rides, but 84 denied? So you're denying almost as many as you are
No,
giving?
184. You have to add those two numbers that I gave you. So some of them are grouped rides, and some of them are individual rides.
But I'm thinking about the rides denied.
84 in the last fiscal year. Fiscal year. Yes.
And you gave 100 and some odd rides.
That's this current fiscal year.
Current fiscal year. Okay.
So, you know, Jordan tracks them by fiscal year.
Yeah.
This is what we've done so far in this current fiscal year.
So the number of rides denied is not a minimal proportion of the people who need rides. It's a
Right.
very significant proportion.
And when I'm saying denied, it means we've said we can't do it, but we've helped them try to negotiate some of the other. But I will say WRTD actually tells people when they can't provide to call our service, which is interesting. So WRTD, when they call the dispatcher to set up a ride, a lot of times they can't provide the medical ride. They have a lot of regular rides that they do on an ongoing basis to work sites, and those kind of things. So they have very minimal spots where they can take as doctor's appointments come up. So they will refer them to us, and that's even in town, in district. So.
Am I allowed to say something?
Yes, Martina.
I also want to let you know that those statistics do not reflect how many of us who are seniors drive other seniors.
Right.
There are a lot of us who do that because they need to get to appointments and they can't. And I'm one of the people who provides that service.
Yes.
And I was sick for 2 weeks and could not provide services for people. So there is a real need here. And the other thing I've been told is that even though Dial-A-Ride says we need 2 weeks notice for rides to medical appointments, they will cancel you, and people have been canceled because they can't do the route. So there's a real problem here.
Ms. Berthelot?
I'm so glad that you're bringing this to us. It's super, super important, and it's a problem that's only going to grow. And so, thank you both for your time presentation. One thought is, it seems like as a town we should approach is it the health committee or in Hartford about fixing the problem with the Husky program, that the fact that there are folks who are on Medicaid who are supposed to get rides or not getting rides because of the vendor seems to be something that we don't want to duplicate what we're already paying for as taxpayers, and that they really need to get another vendor and sort that out. And I seems like there's so many ways to sort of begin going forward and thinking about this, and I'm hoping you'll help me with this. But I mean, one thing is to ask you to come back to us with various proposals, sort of costed out as the ways, being experts, that we should be thinking about this, or whether maybe we need to create a committee to work on these particular problems going forward. I don't get to call on you.
Mr. Shagan?
Well, can I ask, that's an interesting idea that Councilor Berthelot just had, and so this is a general question that I'm not sure anyone here knows the answer to. Maybe it's a Sherry question. Obviously, if we decided to bid services instead of hiring someone, we would go through a formal procurement process. But is there an ability, do you have an ability within the town's procurement standards and restrictions and processes, you know, you have a general sense of the need, of the demand, roughly how many rides, you know, you could come up with a number of how many to where. to get a sense from some local vendors about what a program might cost and what their services would be. It would be difficult to make a decision in a vacuum. I know that we obviously have to be impartial in our bidding process, and so that restricts our ability to reach out to people who might bid on a contract. But there's other communities that do this, those kinds of things, just to get a sense of, I'm not coming at this from a I want to save a buck perspective. I'm worried that hiring someone is going to is not the best use of what will be a fairly substantial amount of money in terms of the amount of service that we would get for folks based on the needs I think we're hearing people need, which is rides that are sort of relatively far away to Manchester, Glastonbury, Farmington, half an hour or more from here.
And actually in some that are local, though, as well. I mean, that's it. I will say that was, the Commission on Aging actually, in its wisdom, didn't ask necessarily for a driver. They asked for 40 hours. So that does not necessarily mean one full-time driver. That could be, because I agree with you, there are specific times that it would be better to have overlap time. There are busier days and busier times for medical appointments, or times when, like for whatever reasons, Tuesdays is a hard time for us to get volunteers. I'm not sure what happens on Tuesdays, but most of our volunteers are busy on that day. So that's often when we use our part-time driver for medical rides. So, having the ability to somewhat look at different options, even if we do go from a staffing perspective, than one full-time person.
Mr. Katzenberger.
Thank you. And also, again, I would reiterate what others said. Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. One question generally, it wouldn't be a solution for everyone anyway, but with Uber, Lyft, the ride-sharing apps, do you have a sense, is the reasons they're not used financial, the cost, or simply or uncertainty about how to use the system, perhaps complicated, not familiar with the apps? Because the second one is sort of easy, well, not easy, but can be addressed relatively easily, at least for some.
I think it depends on the person that you're talking about. Some, absolutely, it's cost. And certainly some, again, at different points in our life, it's harder to jump in the car with someone you don't know. And Uber and Lyft, there are really nice things about Uber and Lyft, but there's some other challenges from security, insurance, and reliability point of view from some of those. And the third, so that's another thing. But also I think that, some people have an expectation of their community that certain things will be available and done for them. And so I think that those are probably the three reasons. I think, like I said, that if you've never used Lyft or Uber, it can be overwhelming, and even more overwhelming. We do have people that do not have cell phones or access. That's why we were hoping that GoGo grandparent would work. Another point that I've heard, a lot of the Uber and Lyft drivers in this area are students, and their availability is not necessarily the time of day that seniors are looking for. So sometimes it's, even if they try to use those apps, they haven't necessarily been, there's been some people that have said they have been successful with that for that reason as well. So,
Mr. Freudman.
I'd like to stay on the topic of Uber a little bit further. I'd like to probe a little deeper, because obviously if the council decides it's going to fund something, I can see a certain benefit to using something that's available and paying for it out of a fund, rather than starting to hire people and having vehicles to maintain and all that. As far as the argument about getting into a car with someone you don't know, look, that's something we can't solve. People take cab rides, and that kind of reason doesn't wash very much with me, because you can always have a bad experience in anything. As far as the technical difficulties, where some people don't have a smartphone, I'm one of them, so I know. so can't do it. But then again, you've shown that through your good offices, you help people find rides. So if somebody says, I'd like to go somewhere, it seems like it'd be just as easy for who's ever trying to arrange transportation to set it up through Uber for that person. I don't know, I can't see how that would be an impediment. Maybe I'm missing something, but...
Well, we have to really be careful about incurring any kind of liability. And so that would be something we'd have to look in with Uber and Lyft. You know, I think that there are some different things that happen when someone goes through livery and gets a particular type of license than the way that things happen with Uber and Lyft. So the town would really, if we were going to go in that direction, I think that would be a question for the attorney to see what kind of and our insurance carrier to see if there's some type of liability we would incur.
I'd like to ask you something else. Do you think that Dial-A-Ride is being totally inflexible, not helping as much as they could, or do you believe that they really are stretched and can't do more? Because I'm hearing a lot of talk of inflexibility and unavailability and saying no to people, and we're paying a pretty penny for this service, and I'm just wondering whether the town is getting its due. I've seen their budget. I mean, we've seen their budget, and again, when Mr. Hart was here, he was actually vice chair of their board, so it was a lot easier to get information and pass things along. But I do believe they're pretty stretched financially, and they have big demands, and rural transportation has a lot of challenges. I think one of their biggest challenge is they have these rides that they've already committed to on an ongoing basis. So you have little flexibility around them. So if you have an early morning appointment, for example, like if you have blood work or, this is the time when you need to get in, and they're doing work transportation, you are not going to get a ride to a doctor's appointment at that time because they have already committed to these regular, I don't know what they call them, subscription riders or whatever. And so there's certain times of the day they really just don't. And then again, even though it's regional, sometimes to take one person, from one end of that region to another can take one driver half a day. I mean, the back and forth. So they do have, some challenges. But again, I would strongly encourage we get another member on that board from the town who could speak for the town too.
Mr. Carrington, I have a question. If we wanted to make an inquiry, put out an inquiry for organizations to bid on a project like this, not a real bid, but what kind of capacity do organizations have to provide this kind of a service? Is there a way we can do that without making any commitments? Could you do like a request for qualifications or something?
Yes, but if you're honest and say you're not going to make a commitment, I don't know how great of a commitment they're going to make on their end to give you a price.
But if you say we're really looking into providing some kind of a service, we just don't know what kind of a service we want to provide or what it's going to cost us, what would you?
I think the best way is, like Councilor Shakin mentioned, maybe looking at other towns that have done something, trying to get,
okay,
even if we have to go out of state to see something, just to get a idea.
Okay.
But I think it's to put something out for a qualification or a bid and knowing you're not going to buy it, it's really not.
Right. I mean,
okay.
There are places that I'm aware of in other areas of the country, it's just not the same fit. For example, Boston has vouchers that you can buy, a booklet of vouchers, seniors can, and it's very low cost, but they have a taxi system, in a more condensed area. Arizona has another thing, but they have huge county-wide transportation, so the way that they do it, and it's a nonprofit that runs it, so they can do it differently than a town or a municipality could. So it's...
I think what you're hearing from us is a real interest in expanding the transportation for seniors. And what we would really like is a little more exploration into all of the possible variations. I mean, I remember when the senior program, volunteer program was set up, that took, quite some time to do. But I think it's time for us to look at a new option and to expand the senior volunteer program beyond the volunteers. So if you could come back to us, hopefully before budget season or during budget season, with some kind of a with some research and perhaps even a proposal, that would be very welcome. Mr. Kotchenberger.
I'm just to get back to the earlier point. I think it's an excellent point that there are certain liability and insurance issues to look at. And I'm not pushing for Uber, Lyft, or any of them, but if we are interested in, a lot of those issues have been worked out. The insurance issues generally, or Kermit will probably be familiar with it. But these issues, I wouldn't view them, I mean, they have to be addressed, but I wouldn't view them as no starters or necessarily obstacles, because other communities have done it, and Uber and Lyft have a market incentive if we were interested in making sure they work out.
Any further questions on the issue of senior transportation? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Horton, for your work on this issue, and we're going to ask more of you in the future, so.
Okay.
Is there anything you would additional you would like to tell us, or?
I was just reminding her that the
the
Commission
charge.
on Aging charges later on.
Oh, okay. All right, right. Okay, the next issue is on our agenda is the Mansfield Agency Grant Program. And this starts on page 29. We have looked at the applications and what the commission has decided. I think some of us have some real questions about some of these allocations. You've given us a blank application, a grant application, yes. So we see what people have to fill out. But there are a couple of agencies whose grant exceeds substantially the others, and we don't have a grant application. I'm wondering if you can tell us something about why each agency got the grant it was recommended for?
So I know that we've talked about this before,
yes.
And these certainly precede my 6-year tenure here. Most of these grants, in fact, are funded at the same level that they were when I first started. And I was asked when I got here to at least formalize a process, because there wasn't as much of a formal process in the past, although they were evaluated by Human Service Advisory, and if they had relevance to the Commission on Aging or Youth Service Advisory as well. But they're pretty much political grants, political administrative grants that at different times these agencies came to the council and requested funds. So they've been in existence for quite some time. I think I'm happy to answer your question, but to give you an answer as to why some are significantly larger than others is not something I could answer, because they pre-existed my tenure here.
So does this mean that when the Human Services Committee reviews these grant applications, they are not reviewing them de novo? They're basically just saying you get what you got last year?
No, they do review them. And in fact, some of the things were introduced when I was here because there was some concerns about a couple of the agencies at the time. One had some issues with fiscal solvency. There were, so that's why now they've asked for things like the audit. Who are the board of directors? Are they signing off? Do they actually know you're applying for a grant? And more specific information, because when I first got here, you didn't necessarily even know how many people they served without any formalized application process. But again, the amounts and recommendations have always been passed on to the town manager in his budget, and then have come before the council. So,
do the agencies represented here are not all of the nonprofits in our region?
they are not.
So how does a nonprofit discover that there is actually a grant program in Mansfield?
There have been in the past press releases. I did that several years when I came here. It's also put out on the town website, and sometimes through, the town Facebook or out that way. Press releases, again, you can send them now out, but they don't always get in the paper. One of the last times that we did it, we got some things that were not even, there were nonprofits that were not even Mansfield nonprofits that saw it in the paper and, were asking about it. We also had some groups that came forward and asked for funds that were not nonprofit organizations when the press release went out. So, and again, towns do these differently. I think Councilman Shaken has said in the past that these grants from many municipalities have dried up over the years. Fewer and fewer towns and cities are in a fiscal position to give these. Some towns and cities say this is how much we're going to give to grants this year, and then that's out, that's like we're going to do, let's say, $25,000 or $30,000, and then they invite people to apply. Some have done it this way, where they have agency grants that they've given for years, and they just come forward and ask for it. And then some have accounts where they bill down for services, and they're approved through a town department. So those are kind of the different ways that it's done, if you were looking at kind of changing that up. But, some towns cap it and say this is the maximum of a grant that we give to any one agency. There's lots of options. This is just the way it's been done here in Mansfield for many, many years.
Mr. Shuren first.
I guess this isn't really a place to go item by item, and I won't ask you to do that, but in a couple of cases, there's a significant difference between this year and the prior year. Let me just take the one example. Perhaps this was mislabeled. On page 38, it says fiscal 2017, fiscal 2018. I believe that should have been fiscal 20 and 21, because that's what it is on the prior page. I'm talking about page 38 of our agenda. Which? Right, okay.
Oh, it didn't get updated.
Yeah, okay. So
yes, yes.
If it's not too much detail, there's a $10,000 jump for United Services.
So that's their request. So they have always requested a per capita. I don't know why. That's just how they've always requested it, and the town has never granted them a per capita. So that $8,000 has been static since I've been here. So there's nothing that says in the application you can't ask for more than a particular amount.
Mr. Bruder?
Hi, I just new to this process, and when you say that this is a political process in terms of the grants, can you expand on that?
So basically, these were decisions that were made by town council in the past, where an agency came forward and said, we'd like you to support this amount. And many of these are many, many years ago. I think the last one that happened with is Veteran Services. So maybe a few of you on here might remember when Veteran Services came forward.
Oh, yes. Several of us do.
And that was initiated by a town council person at the time, correct?
Yes. I think I'm speaking for most of the council members. We're a little uncomfortable with the idea that the grants that we are giving to nonprofits are determined by the particular interests of particular council
No,
members.
and some of them came forward on their own to speak to the town council. That's, it's always presented to the whole council.
Right.
It's not, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, I would like it to be more classically merit-based
Okay.
grants than just, this is what we've always done.
Okay.
Did I interrupt you, Mr. Bruder?
No, I appreciate the clarification. I did just have one other thing. You know, it looks like most of these have been year to year, and the only one that didn't get anything last year that is being proposed for this year is the Wyndham No Freeze project. Is that, I guess that just doesn't follow the same pattern.
Yes, and that is not something I can explain because I know what went into the, from a recommendation to the town manager's budget last year, and this is what came out. So that, I don't know what happened in that process between when it was here, with Human Services Advisory, and then it went into the town manager's office and came out to council. So, because that's what happens, this recommendation would go into the town manager, and then the town manager would take a look, I think, at the overall budget, and then make recommendations. So they did apply last year, but they were not granted last year.
That decision was not made by Human Services Advisory Committee.
No.
It was made by somebody in the town manager's office.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Berthelot.
So big picture, I would like this process to be completely
Mhm.
transparent.
Absolutely.
I tried to find any information about it on our webpage over the last couple of days, and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find the form. I couldn't find what the process was, when people could apply.
Mhm.
I spoke to the director of the No Freeze program,
Right.
and I wanted to know why she was asking for so little money, because I know that their donations are a third down.
Right.
I know they're really struggling, and why are you asking for so little money? And she said that she was under the impression that that's what she was supposed to ask for. And that's not
Right.
this was all, for starters, I've applied for many grants.
Right.
And generally there's a range.
Right.
It says, this is how much we intend to
Mhm.
spend this year. And the grants can be from $2,000 to $8,000, whatever.
Right.
But that we need a whole lot more specificity.
Mhm.
And overall, as I said before, more transparent as to why we're giving money to one organization and not another organization.
Yes, correct. I absolutely agree with you. It would have to be a decision, I think, at the council level to change the process and make some specific, because it is part of the budget process. It becomes part of the budget process. So I agree with you on that.
Perhaps we can ask you to come back with a proposal for making it more transparent, less, well, you use the word political. I don't want to use the word
Right.
political. I would like it more needs-based in
Right.
some way.
And this is truly
Within the ability of the town to
Right.
provide the funds.
This is truly a council, these are truly council decisions, especially since it's part of the budget process. So it would be great to have that definition of what you would want in order to make the best decisions.
Mr. Carrington.
I think what Pat is saying is she puts out the application, people apply, it goes through a process, comes in the manager's office, the manager can change it, usually just like I know I will probably just, here's what they asked for, council, what do you want to do? That was the process 2 years ago when I was interim.
Yeah.
That'll be the process this year unless you give me different guidance, because we don't want to be the one making that decision.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Mr. Shakin.
Try to state this in a thread the needle kind of way. So just as full disclosure, I work for the Connecticut Community Nonprofit Alliance, which is the trade association for community nonprofits in Connecticut. Represent hundreds of organizations across the state, many of whom we give grants to, so I generally recuse myself from making decisions about this funding when we get to this discussion in the budget process, whatever. I don't have a technical conflict in any way. I don't get any financial benefit from any of these organizations besides that they're members among many, many of my organization. Anyway, to try to synthesize perhaps what Councilor Berthelot and the mayor were saying, we're not experts, although Terry and I have a little bit of thought in this, and I just choose not to participate for work reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think what the council is asking for is for the experts, for you, to make a recommendation to us for how to redesign the program. So we understand that this is a council decision, that we will ultimately have to make that decision and make the funding recommendations and ultimately appropriations in the budget. But whether it's a process that goes through the Human Services Committee, which is advisory to us, or just through you, either or both, to create some sort of system where we can have a more open and transparent process that isn't history-based just because a council 10 years ago or 20 years ago started giving an organization this amount of money, and we've just always continued to give that organization exactly that amount of money forever and always. So I think if there's some frustration, it's that we feel, or I feel like we've talked about this for a couple budget years now, and so maybe it's because we've had some transition that this has never gotten and risen to the level of having a let's redesign a process sort of agenda item on the council where we, but whether we need to make that as a formal motion or vote, or whether we can just ask you to come up with some stuff and come to us and we'll make a decision, I think probably the second one makes more sense.
Yeah, I agree. The second one makes more sense. We don't really have anything to vote on at the moment. Mr. Carrington?
Yeah, we appreciate the guidance. I mean, we've been operating, I guess, maybe with lack of specific guidance.
Yeah.
Now we understand that the form, rework it, maybe we come up that every maximum amount is whatever that is, and more needs-based. We do ask for some information, but maybe they need to be more specific without trying to make it too burdensome for some of these organizations because they don't have the staff to fill out, you know.
Right. One of my concerns is that these grants, a grant of $1,000 to access will probably cost them $1,000 to put the grant proposal together and to do the reporting. I mean, at some point, this is really not worth it for them. So
We don't want to increase the
we
burden.
certainly don't want to increase the burden, but we do want to make decisions that are based on something real. Right. Mr. Freudman.
Yes, I agree with all the comments, and I too have noted over many years, we usually just see grants to local area agencies that show up with certain set amounts at budget season, and we just okay it, and there's no or little debate, usually none at all on it. So I'm glad you're taking a close look at these, and we will rely on your suggestions. And I too was struck by how little the no freeze project is asking for, and that's to me the kind of project that I know No Freeze is doing, where it's really helping people where the rubber meets the road on the spot who need help, is something to me that's tangible. When I see something like the veterans something here, outreach, referral, I don't know what that means. How much is that helping? You have a counselor there, it's talking to somebody, but I like things where I really know people are being helped that need help then, and I wish, that's why I hope that when you look at these, that would be one thing that might inform what you suggest to us, is what has really the most effectiveness for people that really need help on the spot.
I would say all of these agencies provide vital services. All of them, have financial challenges as nonprofits, and that becomes a challenge when you're looking at these applications as well. So they are all great agencies. I wouldn't say any one of them, don't use the money very well and are in need. So I think that is
I'll just say that when I think of an organization like No Freeze, I'm thinking of an organization that isn't spending a lot on self-promotion or overhead. I
Mhm.
mean, they really
Mhm.
do the job that
Mhm.
they say they're going to do. And other organizations, well, I don't know. There's sometimes it's a little harder to figure out what's going on,
Right.
and that's
Mhm.
where we
Yep.
would appreciate your help.
Mr. Carrington.
I just want to be realistic. We're probably 5 to 6 weeks out from when Pat will be sitting here to talk about this year.
Right.
So this may, we're talking more future, you know.
Yes,
Just
this
want-
one may be a little more for the future.
Just want everyone to understand that.
Mr. Shaken.
I agree with that, but I want to just throw out a word that I think we have this conversation around this time of year, every year. Maybe it's in a couple weeks when we get to the budget part, but either way, it shouldn't wait until next year's budget.
Mhm.
You know, we
Right.
send these, we expect these applications back in November or December, and so we ought to be working on this, you know, late spring, summer, so that the application process can be changed for next year.
Yeah. Okay, so we've given you 2 jobs, and now I think we're about to give you a third one. So the next item on our agenda is youth services and restorative justice. And
I'm going to ask Katie Bell to come up, who is the supervisor of the youth services and our resident expert on restorative justice.
welcome.
That is an intimidating introduction and a very daunting title, but thank you. Thank you all for having me here tonight. So as Pat mentioned, I am the youth services supervisor for the town of Mansfield, so I help to oversee the functionality of the youth service bureaus. For anyone who is newer to the role and scope of youth service bureaus, we're a wonderful set of individual organizations throughout the state of Connecticut that we are tasked by the state to deliver a variety of services to serve youth in towns 0 to 18 who are still in school in whatever needs the community sees fit. So we operate differently from one town to another, depending on what the needs of the community are, the staffing of the Youth Service Bureau itself, as well as what the funding levels are. So we here at Youth Services have 4 full-time staff, myself, 2 Youth Services social workers, and an early childhood services coordinator. And we're very thankful to have our second Youth Services social worker based on the budget recommendations from last year, and Kelly's been a wonderful addition to our team. So I know there's been a few things that are in the packet about restorative justice and some of the things that other youth service bureaus are doing across the state, as well as kind of an overview and a scope of what restorative justice is and what it isn't. So I am thinking that y'all have had a chance to kind of look through, so I'm wondering if it's better if you have questions that I might be able to answer, or if you'd prefer me to give kind of an overview to the council.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, you say you go all the way to 18, so you cover Region 19 as well?
We are mandated by the state of Connecticut to provide services from 0 to 18 for youth. We don't have specific high school programming for folks in Region 19 high school. However, we still serve as a referral base for those residents. So if we have, say, a family who comes to us saying, I have a sophomore in high school, I really need some services, what is there to connect them to? We work with that family to identify what those appropriate services are in the community. And we are lucky enough in this part of the state, and specifically in the town of Mansfield, to have a lot of really great providers. So we might not be the ones doing the direct service, but we are the community referral hub, both in function as well as through the state mandate of Connecticut.
So we, because Region 19 is a regional high school, and the decisions again preceded me. So I came into this. This was new for me. Most youth service bureaus serve all the way up through high school. But we do the school social work for the elementary schools and middle school, because those are all Mansfield residents. And we do referral up at the high school level. I will say, and with some of the changes that have happened statewide, with the changes in both the court system here in the state, and particularly the juvenile court system, and also the changes with the truancy law. We have had to absorb some different things that were not under our purview in the past, and we are also taking a look right now in the best way to do a good, solid diversion program that would be for youth all the way up through high school, again, with some of the changes that have happened statewide. Staff is going through a lot of training. There's been a lot of discussion in the Youth Service Advisory Board regarding this topic. The memo speaks a little bit to juvenile review boards, which are, again, very different than they were when they were first established, which was more like a mock court system. If you have any experience from, I've been around for a lot of years, from 20 years ago, it was more like a court system, whereas now it's more a move toward community engagement and restorative justice, where you try to keep the youth connected and to make restorative action if there's harm that's happened. So we have, like I said, the state is offering a lot of training. The money's out there. In fact, there's a number that are coming up that staff and some youth service advisory members possibly are going to go to over the next couple of months. And we'll be taking a look at whether establishment of a juvenile review board, whether it's individual to Mansfield or a regional option, or some other type of a diversion program. There are a couple of other models out there. Makes best sense for this community. So that's kind of what we're in the process with, that whole restorative justice and juvenile review board options. We have partnered with, in fact, Katie did. We had some kids from the school that got in trouble, and Columbia has a juvenile review board, and they agreed to hear. There was one Mansfield youth that was part of that action. So Katie actually took that on and did the case management and worked with the youth on that so that youth could go through a juvenile review board. But currently we don't have a setup here in town on our own for that to happen.
Mr. Shaken.
That's all very good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. So the genesis of this agenda item, if you didn't watch our last several meetings on tape, is we had a lot of comment in from staff, primarily from E.O. Smith. One of the folks who commented, two of them I think, actually mentioned the existence, the previous long, I think ancient history existence of a JRB here, and that it was gone now. And I think, part of that mentioning was sort of to make a point to us about the policy decision we were making regarding school resource officers there, which was well taken. So I guess my ask to both of you is to work. That was Chuck Levins, who's the retired social worker at E.O. Smith. His replacement, he's filling in for while she's on family leave, and so either with him or when she gets back or with the administration as a whole, sort of work with them if you're not already on a solution. I think the town, recognizing that Wellington and Ashford don't have human services departments that are bigger than one person, if they have them, one person at all. It might be a good shared service for us to work on with them. They have social workers, we have social workers here, and so to try to work together on something that will make sense. I was really heartened. Part of one of the things I learned from the last month of those conversations with the region, when I went there, the school arrests were very frequent. They were regular occurrences. Students routinely were arrested for drug possession, routinely then went through significant juvenile court proceedings. Obviously, state law has changed substantially since then. The court system's changed a lot since then, too. But also the arrest rate at E.O. Smith has plummeted. I mean, the numbers they presented to us, that as of a month ago, they'd had 3 arrests on campus this entire school year, which 15 years ago, that would have been, a month, maybe even less. And so I don't know that there's a need for us to establish a whole board here if the arrests are that low, but to work together with them to come up with some regional program that works with all three of the towns plus the other feeding communities into E.O. Smith through the ag program and otherwise, and our middle school if we have any, whatever, especially given now that they have school resource officers there that are establishing relationships with kids that could serve on such a board alongside case management and others. I think it makes some sense to try to put something together with them.
Right. Well, and again, just to clarify, the Juvenile Review Board is not just for the school, because kids get in trouble in all kinds of places and ways. So, and having been in other communities that have either another type of diversion program or a juvenile review, it's, in fact, probably less frequently at school than in other locations. So that's why we need to have a plan, because there isn't another plan anymore. Let me just put it to you that way. So, and by statute, they are turning a lot of stuff back to towns.
And I suspect that the social work folks, the people who are doing social work in the guidance department at E.O. Smith, are restricted in a similar way that we dealt with last year when we hired social workers to work with Mansfield Board of Ed families through the town, because they were able to make contact outside of school, where the social workers at E.O. Smith are really probably restricted based on that same restriction to school-based sort of intervention at E.O.
Right.
Smith.
And that is a challenge here in the town, just to let you know that we don't have staff designated specifically to work other than as an information and referral with high school students, which again is very unique and different to Mansfield.
Sure.
Bruder.
I don't know how much either one of you could speak to the history that used to be in town. One of the public comments that really stuck out to me was that there was a young high school student who came and said that, we're spending this money, or money's being spent on SROs. How come there's not money being spent on the mental health services in the same way? And it sounds like for right now we are a referral service, but has that always been the case historically?
It was not, and again, this way precedes my time, but there was a point where the town and school made the decision to pull services that used to be in youth service into the high school. So, and at that time decided not to provide services for high school students through youth services in Mansfield. And that's many years ago. So,
Okay.
No,
I'm just curious.
That I can't speak to. I can say that it's a challenge for us sometimes, because the families that we work with, they get to the middle school and they go to the high school, and they don't have access to the same things
There's not that
that
continuity.
we have. Right. We do have relationships with the high school staff.
Sure.
But again, schools are very limited in what they can do, and they're not available after hours, and they're not necessarily available during the summer. And when you got children at different levels in the school system, that can be a challenge. Or kids who age out of our programs.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Kotchenberger.
Thank you both for coming tonight on this. If you could, I read the memos, but if you could just explain a little more, how does this interact with the judicial system, the court system? Is this recognized, and does the prosecutor potentially recommend students or not children or youths to come before this kind of court, or is it recommended from the community?
So there are a few different avenues that a case can find its way to a juvenile review board. And there's also other types of diversion programs that don't require charges to be filed. So in some towns, For example, if a youth is found to have vaping paraphernalia on themselves in the school and it's maybe not a THC vape, but it's a nicotine vape, there might not be an arrest that's issued. However, if there is a JRB in place, the school can make a referral to the JRB. So in that case, it's maybe not something that would have risen to the level of judicial, but can still be seen in a juvenile review board context to help that youth kind of engage in a better thoughtful decision-making process and understand the pros and cons of their behavior and the more desirable outcomes to themselves and their community members. In cases where there is an arrest, there's a few different times that it can be sent back to the JRB. So it could be the arresting officer says, based on what this case is, it's a non-serious offense. It's a first-time offense for this youth. Instead of making this go to the court, we're going to send you to the JRB, and you have to agree to participate in the JRB if you don't want this to go to court. So JRBs are all a voluntary process across the state of Connecticut. There's not a mandate that youth and families participate in them. They very much are an alternative to the judicial system. So it could come in prior to even touching a court or probation, depending on the arresting officer. It could be the case that, say a youth gets in trouble outside of their own town, but it goes through to the court probation system, and the probation officer for that court says, this young person's from a town that I know has a JRB. Based on what the offenses are, I would like to reach out to the JRB and see if it can be a case that's seen through diversion. So there's a few different ways that it can come in. It can be referrals from parents. It can be, like I said, referrals from schools where an arrest doesn't take place. It could be a referral from a police officer, again, where arrest maybe doesn't take place. So there's a few different ways that youth can be diverted from the court system when it comes to I want to use the correct terminology that they use in the literature when it comes to a delinquency offense. So there's also a few things that we as youth service bureaus are now getting as state mandates, either currently or in the future. So if anybody is familiar with family with service needs referrals, those are referrals that used to all go to DCF and the court system for a few different things. So the first set that now comes to youth service bureaus is the school-based referrals. So that includes truancy, and that includes defiance of school rules. So whereas those had previously been seen in court, the research really found that it wasn't improving outcomes for these kids. Instead, it was creating what they really refer to as the school-to-prison pipeline. So kids who were coming into contact with the juvenile justice system as a result of truancy didn't improve their academic attendance, but they were finding more increased instances of either recidivism, including ongoing issues with truancy, as well as future juvenile court or adult court connection later on. So they really identified youth service bureaus as the community referral hub to, instead of kind of creating a punitive approach in contact with the juvenile justice system, a way to do strengths-based and provide support and removal of barriers in the communities that they serve. So we have now been the state-mandated referral hub for Mansfield youth, regardless of what school they go to and what age they are, as long as they're still in school. We are the mandatory referral hub for that, for truancy and defiance of school.
And if it is that's very helpful, thank you. And if it is a criminal action or in court, then the court, if it refers it to it, needs then to respect the decisions of the JRB, or it's not. Is it advisory to the court, or is the court expected to? That's really the diversion, and it doesn't hit the court again as long as everyone complies.
So the way that diversion would work going through a JRB, so say it is that delinquency referral, if a family agrees to have the case seen in JRBs, then typically the best practice would be that both the youth and family are agreeing to participate, and that the youth acknowledges that they did the thing that they are being accused to do. If the youth are saying, no, I'm not admitting to having done this, then it does have to go through the court process, because the JRB isn't designed to
determine guilt.
Not a court. It doesn't
Right, it's not a
determine the facts.
court. So folks typically are seen for 3 to 6 months, and they work with case managers along diversions that have been ideally jointly developed by members of the Juvenile Review Board, potentially individuals who had been harmed by the person being seen at the Juvenile Review Board, family members of the individual who has kind of found themselves in some hot water, as well as the individual themselves, to identify these are really the areas that help me to make amends. And during that, I don't want to call it a probationary process because it is very much different and distinctly apart from probation, but during that period of time, there's the case management check-in to see, are you following through with what you agreed to in kind of making those amends. And then at the end of that 3 to 6 month period, the case is then seen typically before the Juvenile Review Board again to review progress and determine if there's been a successful completion of the diversions that everybody agreed upon. And if that has been a successful diversion, that case is never seen in court. The paperwork is held for, I believe it's a period of 6 months before it's a mandate that it's shredded. So it does not go on the youth's record. It does not count as anything they would have to list on a college application of having ever been arrested. It doesn't have the same status as, say, I went to the court but had something nollied or was found not guilty. It's as though they've never touched the juvenile justice.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And the other thing is it is an opportunity for families to connect with services. So if there's oftentimes we connect people with mental health services and other services during that time, during that case management. Again, because of kind of our service parameters here, we wouldn't do mental health services here ourselves like we can do with middle school and elementary age students, but we can refer out for those services for high school age students and young adults.
And oftentimes for cases that might be seen in a JRB, being that community hub and knowing what resources are in the area, even if they're not internal resources, is actually a way to connect folks to some of the better fitting programs that do exist in our community, which I can think of even just in Mansfield alone. We have some agency providers that do home-based services. We have some community providers that do specific youth and substance use treatment and community-based interventions that are really designed to help reconnect youth into their communities. So there's a lot of resources here that are excellent programs for us to refer into when we get those cases, whether it's through a JRB in the future or even, like I said, even if it's just a Mansfield parent saying, I'm having these issues going on with my child, what do I do?
Ms. Berthelot.
Thank you so much, both.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Your great deal of knowledge, and I think the research is so very clear as this is the direction that we should be going in. And I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I'll speak as a counselor in saying that I would like this to happen. I would like Mansfield to be doing this, and that especially with the school resource officers, that we do need to have this in place, and we don't want kids to be arrested. We don't want kids to be part of the juvenile justice system. And the research shows that the opportunity to give something back to the community is what really turns kids' lives around. So I would really like to see this as a program here in Mansfield.
Yeah, I've been following these issues for many, many years. The first restorative justice program was created in Hartford by Judge Norco. The late Judge Norco now. Must have been 20 years ago, and obviously the good news has spread. So one of the things about these kinds of programs that's always been so impressive is that the court system does not ever make it possible for an apology to count for anything. And the court system does not allow kids to repair the damage they have done. So these two things are really life-changing opportunities for people who've done things that hurt other people to stand in those people's shoes and to understand
the harm they've done, and then to try to find some ways of remedying the damage that they've done. So I very strongly support this, and I would hope that you would come back to us in the near future, preferably before the end of the current agreement for SROs at E.O. Smith, with a concrete proposal, hopefully district-wide, Mansfield and at least the contributing towns, if not others, because I think this is a really important place for Mansfield to be. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Freudman.
It sounds like a good program, but I sometimes look at things from a different perspective, and I have a deep respect for the law of unintended consequences. And what this really does in some cases is it lowers the bar for somebody having an engagement with the system, be it the Juvenile Review Board all the way up to dealing with the court system. I get that. But in terms of the whole system, the only problem I see with this kind of a program is that what might have been as a relatively minor infraction that might have been dealt with a 2-day suspension, maybe some other loss of privileges, you can't be on the team anymore or something like that, or extracurricular activities, now becomes a referral to a juvenile review board, and you're dealing with the system, whereas whatever it was might not have risen to the level where it would have engaged the police, the arrest, or the court system. And that's the problem I see with these kinds of programs, is it lowers the bar for which somebody will have engagement with the system.
It's actually a choice whether people participate in this. It's not a mandate, so I understand what you're saying. It also will depend on how the schools choose to, because what you're talking about, I think it sounds like, are school-related things, how they choose to deal with that. And again, I can say just in our talk with the elementary schools and the middle schools, they're really looking at restorative practices at a very young age, and it really has to do with exactly what you were saying, getting to see how what you did affected the community and trying to re-engage someone with the community so that, yes, there is a chance for relationships to be prepared. It doesn't mean that. So that's really it really is, from what the research is showing, what's in the best interest of both the individual and the community itself, to have those opportunities really for restoration of a relationship and then a positive outcome.
Well, as a follow-up, I would say that it sounds good, and I know you mean it, and there are a lot of cases where that is exactly the case. But your phrase that they're given a choice, to me means, you gave an example yourself where somebody is found with basically a cigarette, and before, maybe it would have been just that suspension. You're no longer being in your extracurricular activities. Now they're given a choice, and the choice comes with a threat. You could go to Juvenile Review Board for the cigarette, or maybe we'll consider referring it to the police or to the court system, and that becomes a credible threat. So you say it's a choice, but sometimes I think it's a Hobson's choice.
Actually, a cigarette wouldn't go to the court system ever at all. It is an opportunity in the school system if they have rules, which is different. And a suspension does sit on your record and doesn't maybe look so good in high school when you're trying to apply for other things. So some people would choose to go through some type of a restorative thing if that would clear that off of their school record. But again, choice.
Mr. Bruder.
Just to clarify, because I think I understand it a little bit, when you say choice, the parent is the one who gets to decide as to whether or not they engage in this process, correct?
So it would be both the parent and the youth have to agree to participate in the JRB rather than have the case seen in court.
So-
And speaking kind of to the, will it increase the connectivity to the system, it wouldn't circumvent or take away from any school disciplinary policies. Instead, the ideal would be it becomes collaborative with what those school disciplinary policies are. And that would be kind of building that relationship with all the various schools that we would be looking at serving for, you know, the realistic picture of vaping is one of the number one referrals to JRBs that are being seen right now, whether or not they are containing nicotine only or THC or a mix of the two. And some of that does come through the Family with Service Needs defiance of school rules that schools can actively refer to us now for anyway. So it doesn't keep schools from utilizing their own disciplinary policies and procedures. It just becomes potentially an additional tool in response to that and helping create some of that opportunity for learning. While we know neurologically our kids are not fully equipped for the executive decision making, that happens around 25 for the best of us. We all know folks who haven't hit that yet.
No, that was going to be my other point or question is that this process doesn't replace anything. It just augments your options.
Correct. And what it does prevent is those genuine touches with the juvenile justice system. And what that also does, beyond creating the learning opportunities, is it keeps our youth from experiencing ineffective learning opportunities through the court system of, I've been arrested, but there isn't a consequence because my case has been nollied. I've been arrested, I was seen in court, and my case was dismissed for whatever reason. And the different side of learning of this thing that I've done actually doesn't have very impactful consequences to myself, without having the opportunity to look at what are the consequences that my actions have brought upon the lives of others.
I think we've been looking at examples on the fringes, but the real examples are kids fighting don't get arrested for assault, and kids joyriding in borrowed cars don't get arrested for theft. They can do something else. It is really designed to keep kids out of the court system where they would be unnecessarily or excessively punished for what is a youthful indiscretion or a lack of understanding of the consequence, a lack of understanding of what the real consequences of their behavior.
I can speak from, again, because my previous community, I was part of a pretty extensive diversion program, and we had a student in a middle school who destroyed a bunch of soap dispensers in the school. Very expensive damage, but really didn't understand that, and it was an acting out. So we were able to, instead of that going through the court system, we were able to work with the mother who felt out of control, hook up her with some counseling and do some restorative work with the student. And it was very positive. We actually were able to hook them up, the student up who was feeling very disengaged with an after-school program too that we offered. So it was a very positive outcome versus sending it through the court system. So I have seen it work over the years that I've been involved.
Okay, we really look forward to hearing a real proposal from you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pat, you can't go away yet. One last thing. We have a proposal for charge revision for the Commission on the Aging. Mr. Bruder, do you want to present this? This comes from your Committee on Committees.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So I move to adopt the following resolution. Resolved that the Commission on the Aging created by the Town Council Resolution on August 12th, 1974, and revised by the Town Council Resolution on January 8th, 1979, shall hereinafter be known as the Commission on Aging. Further resolved that the Commission on Aging shall consist of 9 members who shall be appointed by the Town Council for 3-year overlapping terms. The Director of Human Services and the Senior Center Supervisor shall be non-voting ex officio members. The Commission shall advise the Town Council, the Town Manager, and the Director of Human Services as to the needs and concerns of the senior citizens of the Town of Mansfield. The specific responsibilities of the Commission are: 1, to study the conditions and needs of senior citizens in the town in relation to housing, economics, health, transportation, and other matters. 2, to recommend and evaluate programs to meet the needs of senior citizens and to suggest priorities for action. 3, to provide directions to appropriate resources for senior citizens in need of assistance. And 4, to furnish information and advocacy to agencies and service providers who support senior citizens.
This is a committee resolution, so it doesn't need a second. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I just would like to point out that when we had members of the Commission on Aging come and speak in regards to this, I know a lot of work had been put into it and a lot of thought, and I very much appreciated it, and it was something that had been worked on and thought about for a number of time. So I'd like to speak in support of it.
Any further comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Passed unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Shaken.
We've talked about this as a council several times, just sort of having department heads come to us with just sort of this has been basically a whole meeting just talking about the goings on in the department. I really appreciated this. I want to thank you for what I'm sure was a lot of prep work for tonight. This wasn't a formal, like, we're just going to have the Human Services Department here. We had a bunch of things we wanted to talk to you about, but this was really great, and I really enjoyed and appreciated taking a dive into a few different programs that you work on, and it's something that I think we should do more of with all of our departments, take a deep dive into facilities maintenance and other stuff too. So thank you for all of your work. This was very good.
Thank you.
On the other hand, we didn't get an overview, so there's still some other issues out there.
Yes.
But thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the resolution, which has been handed to you prior to the meeting, and it calls for a resolution. Is there somebody who will make this resolution? Mr. Shuren.
Resolution resolved pursuant to Section C502 of the Charter of the Town of Mansfield, John C. Carrington, the interim town manager of the Town of Mansfield, shall sign and make all contracts and agreements in the name of the corporation from this day forward.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Shouldn't there be a phrase, as long as he serves as town manager? It's not from this day forward, exactly.
The reason for this is for a grant that we have to put together, so there's probably contracts I've already signed and agreements. This was just a formality that probably should have been done the day I took over. Yeah.
Right. Yes, agreed. Okay. Any further questions about the resolution? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Congratulations, John. You may now sign contracts. Report of council committees, committee on committees.
Yes. The Committee on Committees, has the following recommendations, the following motions based on actions taken at our February 13th regular meeting. We moved to appoint Mia Mitoma to the Eastern Regional Tourism District for a term ending March 1st, 2023. We moved to appoint Miranda Davis as an alternate to the Parks and Natural Resources Committee for a term ending October 1st, 2020. Move to reappoint the following Arts Advisory Committee members for terms ending March 1st, 2021. David Vaughn Ann Williams, Judith McChesney, Kim Bova-Kaminsky, Susan Meisler, and move to appoint the following representatives to the Water System Advisory Committee: Adrienne McPherson as the Economic Development Commission representative, and William Lennon as the Sustainability Committee representative.
Do any members have questions of the motion? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of these nominations, please raise your hand. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all of these members who have volunteered to serve. Do you have any further report from the Committee on Committees?
Just that when we met, we also took up the Human Rights Commission charge, and we're drafting that and hope to have something soon to bring back for the town council.
And also, you will be considering recommendations for the Middle School Roof Building Committee.
Correct.
For which you are soliciting members, at least 2 members of the, or 3 members from the public, who should submit, if they are interested, submit a letter of interest or an email of interest to the town clerk, Ms. Sarian Chain, and you will have to have a special meeting in order to bring those recommendations to our next March 9th council meeting.
Yes, and so we're now officially taking those, and we're also hoping to have a WRTD position for us.
Yes. Are there any other opening positions that you're aware of that you are soliciting candidates for?
Those are the most important ones right now.
Okay. All right. Finance?
We will, next meeting will be on Monday, and we will have a fairly extended discussion, I hope, on the liability portion of our town insurance policy, see if the limits are sufficient in exclusions. So if you'll come, I will bring food. I asked the town manager if we should move it to the middle school for attendance, and he seemed to think not. So we will hold it here at 6 p.m.
Liability is bound to get a very large audience.
I hope so.
Ms. Berthelot, personnel.
We met this evening. There were 2 things on our agenda of note. We've reviewed the updated MOU for school resource officers. It's currently a work in progress, but I have full expectation that we should have something by the next town council meeting for the entire council. And we're also making some minor changes to the rules of procedure, the council rules of procedure, and again, I fully expect that we'll have something at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Departmental and Advisory Committee reports, any comments? All right, the first item on our petitions, requests, and communications is the memo from Ms. Tran regarding the depot campus lease payments. This, it seems to me, is a much more significant communication than we can deal with tonight, and I would like your authority to refer it first to the Finance Committee for consideration and then to come back to us at its earliest possible convenience. I'm hoping that Ms. Tran will spend some time with the Finance Committee explaining where this came from and what it is and the whole works. Mr. Shaken.
Is the good chair sure we can fit it in around the liability insurance discussion?
Actually,
Through you, Mayor.
Since we start at 6, we may need to either have an earlier meeting or discuss one of those 2 issues later. I do think we actually was Citizen Betty Wassman's point on the Liability Council on the policy, and she's right. This is something that needs to be reviewed periodically. However, if we can't do both, if it's the council's wishes, we'll go ahead and do this first because there is some time.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments on petitions, requests, and communications? Mr. Freudman.
Thank you. Just a quick comment on item 11C. 11C being the report from LAZ Parking, or what's called here Store Center Parking Operation. I just want to begin by again thanking Mr. Carrington for getting this report for us on a regular basis. It shows us what's going on with the parking at Store Center in terms of LAZ parking. I'll just highlight a few numbers. On page 68 of the packet, you'll notice on the fifth column on that page, second number down, it shows that second column, second number going down on the second column, you'll see that their budget amount for violations in Store Center is $6,000 a month. That's not, and I understand, Mr. Carrington clarified this some months ago, that's not a quota, a target, but it is reflective, according to LAZ Parking, of what they usually get or expect to get. Two more numbers I'll mention. The actual total revenue that they got from Store Center parking, that's LAZ Parking, you could see in the fifth column, going down to the fourth number, which is a total of all the revenue sources, and that's $389,000. Probably a better number to look at is the one in the last column on that same line, where they expect on an annual basis to be getting about $720,000 from parking. Now, the significance I think there should be looked at on this is you can think of that as a tax or a tariff. It's the cost of doing business for people coming to live or recreate or have appointments or whatever in Store Center. That's taken out of the lifeblood, so to speak, of the project known as the Store Center project. Just thought I'd mention it. It's a way of looking at it. This is never a good thing in any economy when there's this kind of a draw for something external. That's my comment. Again, thank you, Mr. Carrington, for including the report. Appreciate it.
Any further comments on petitions, requests, and communications? All right. Then we'll move on to the next agenda item, future agendas. Do we have any items for future agendas? None? Then yeah, right, all the human services ones, right.
I was just, as we've said,
Mr. Kachenberg, sorry.
No, that's all right. We've talked about if we want to have a reception for the new president, we should do it while he's still new. So
I understand that Carol Workman, who is our liaison, is trying to set something up. I will ask her again to press for this. You're right. It is time. I am hoping to have it in town, although I have understood that he wants to have a smaller reception in the president's home. So maybe we need to do both. But in any case, I will continue to ask about that. Okay. Any other future agendas? Then the next item is a motion to adjourn. Moved by Peter Kachenberger. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Shuren. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We are adjourned. Thank you.